I have a number of broadleaf evergreens that I couldn't get in the ground before the big freeze, so I just have them healed into the ground here. And that's simply a technique of digging a hole and putting the pot below ground level so the roots stay at ground temperature and the foliage above ground is exposed to the cold temperatures. So in this case I have an Indian hawthorn, and I wanted to show you there was some newish growth that had sprouted late in the fall, and it looks like that's been damaged by the frost, but the established Indian hawthorn leaves were not affected by the cold temperatures. And actually I've seen Indian hawthorn growing around here, so I'm pretty sure it can live here. It's somewhat marginal in Middle Tennessee. This would be the very northern limit of its growing range, but based on what I've seen, if the foliage is fully hardened off for the winter, it should be able to make it. Now, we haven't had the really coldest temps of winter yet, but preliminary results are good on the Indian hawthorn. And let's check a few others. Here's a Pittosporum tobira that I have healed in as well, and it has not suffered any damage from the recent frosts. This is another one where we're pushing the upper limits of how far north it can be grown. So far, so good. This is the Diamond Spire Gardenia, healed in, and no problem with any leaf damage in the cold temperatures so far. Pretty impressive. This one is a Eucalyptus neglecta, and it hasn't really taken any damage on the leaves either. There's a little browning on the edges, but on the whole I'd say it looks pretty good. It's probably gotten down to around 20 degrees Fahrenheit here so far. So I don't know, what would that be? -5 Celsius maybe? This is a mountain pepper, another species from Australia, like the eucalyptus. And it's doing pretty good. There's a little browning here and there, but on the whole, it looks like it's probably going to hold up pretty well. This is a banana shrub, not a banana tree. It's called a banana shrub because of the flowers, but it's, I guess, somewhat distantly related to Magnolia, Michelia figo. This one has had some browning that appeared just after the frosts, so I think it has taken a little bit of foliage damage, at least on some of the leaves. None of these brown spots were there before the recent hard frosts, so I'm pretty sure that's cold damage on this tree. There you go. We'll see. This one is another one that's pushing the upper boundaries of how far north it can be grown. Here's another broadleaf evergreen I have temporarily healed in before it gets planted. The curveleaf Japanese privet. And this one on the very upper leaves, which I guess were the youngest, has got some cold damage. You can see the browning, but the older, more established leaves are pretty much not affected. There's another case of newer leaves turning brown there on the tips, but the older foliage further down is pretty good. So curved leaf Japanese privet, so far so good, I'd say. Another broadleaf evergreen, Trocodendron aurelioides, otherwise known as wheel tree, had some browning on a few random leaves here and there. These at the back really got damaged. I don't know why out of all the leaves those did, but the other ones that are mainly sun facing, so I guess the lower leaves on this one were damaged by the cold. I'm going to keep a close eye on this tree during the winter to see how it does, but it's not dead yet. And this is a Mahonia eurybracteata, otherwise known as the soft caress mahonia, and the entire upper surface that got hit by heavy frost turned brown. So this one seems pretty susceptible to cold weather. It's in a fairly protected location as well, so I guess this is another waiting game to see what happens during the rest of the winter when we get those really cold temperatures. But not looking good so far for the soft caress mahonia. Another tree I've got temporarily healed in is a Japanese Clayera, and this one is actually the genus Clayera. Clayera japonica is the species. A variegated cultivar that I got from nurcar.com, and the only damage is on the very tips where it looks like it was growing some late season foliage, and these have pretty much been damaged. I think they'll turn completely brown probably and fall off eventually, but all of the established foliage looks like it was not affected by the cold. And the last bit of damage here is on the very top of the Hong Kong rose, Rhodolea henryi. The rest of it completely unaffected, and it's in a pretty protected spot. But it tried to put on some late season new growth, and that got frozen back. So those are the only broadleaf evergreens that had any damage during the first frost, and it was mainly due to the fact that we had such a warm fall with 80s all the way into November, and I guess that kind of freaked out a bunch of different plants, and they tried to put on some late season growth, and obviously that was susceptible to freezing temperatures. So I'll keep you updated as the winter progresses.